I think of the work as a product of the modern times, and I think of how it fits into the world at the current period.
Yes, well, I never really intended to write a piano concerto. I was always rather daunted by the idea. I suppose thinking of the great concertos of the 19th century and thinking of it as essentially a 19th century medium. But then Gavin Henderson, who was the artistic director of the Dartington International Summer School, he was retiring in 2009 and asked me if I could write a concerto for that season, and quite a modest one. He suggested piano and strings, and so that seemed quite a good idea.
When learning a solo work, you're mostly thinking about yourself and how you're going to present the piece on stage to an audience. But when learning a concerto or a piece for yourself and other musicians, it's much of a group effort. So you have to think about how the work is going to be viewed in the minds of the other musicians as well as your own, and how those two things will fit together.
It's in 4 movements, which are the sort of traditional 4 movements of symphonic works. Could I find some kind of substitute of a dance that's known to everybody today? And I thought of the tango as being very attractive, and I've always loved tangos, and I thought the concerto should have one, so I put it in.
The technique in the piano writing of David Matthews Concerto can be very tricky to work out sometimes, and you have to be very focused on the fingering you're using, because it is not very conventional writing. There's very awkward passages at some point, so it's, of course, a lot of slow work and a lot of intense work on the fingering. The third movement of the work, the elegy, is, I think, the centerpiece of the work. It's, I think, the deepest movement of the work, and it speaks to a very dark emotion.
Well, the elegy was written as a memorial piece for a friend of mine, Sue Skempton, who was the wife of the composer Howard Skempton, and she very, very sadly died quite young. And so I put quite a lot of feeling into this piece, into this movement.
I would certainly like it to be a staple of my repertoire, and I think that it almost serves as a sort of bridge between certain periods and certain ways of thinking about music, because it's a very modern work, but it also, I think, it appeals to certain classical traditions as well.
I don't want there to be just one way of playing my music at all. I like it very much when performers add their own individual touches to the performance and make variations and maybe go against what I intended if it's something that I like. I don't necessarily want to confine players to playing only in one way. I very much like individual interpretation.
Well, with all the works I play, I think about what questions I would ask the composer of the work, and I have an imaginary dialogue, I think, with the composer. But with a living composer, I go about it, I think, in a similar way. But this time I can actually talk to the composer.
What advice would I give? I'm very careful in writing in all the dynamic levels and so on. Apart from that, I then would like him to use his own, especially as he's a composer, to use his own ideas about interpretation.